Yes, hello. Once again, welcome back to this weekly episode of Talking Pictures. My name's Brian and I'm joined today by my good friend and co-host, David. How are you, David?
I'm good, Brian. How are you?
Swell. We're doing another one over the interwebs.
Yeah, couldn't do it in person this time, but nonetheless, we're still here to discuss a movie. But as always, before we get into the movie, have you got a trailer of the week for us?
Yeah, sure do. What do you make of Sony these couple of years in what they're trying to do for themselves?
They're trying to hold on to a license that should they have? I don't know. You can make arguments for and against, but it seems like they're really, really holding on to it with every fibre of their being. They don't want to let go of the Spider-Man franchise, so
scraping the bottom of the barrel with Madam Web. Like, who? I mean, what? Madam Web? What's that? Madam Web is a D-list, E-list, whatever list. Definitely not in the forefront of characters in the catalogue in that of the Spider-Man library. Ranging back from the comics, so just like they've been doing their Venom movies, and then they did their Morbius movie, and then they have their Craven the Hunter movie, which has been pushed to this year along with Venom 3 and this movie, Madam Web. Now it's just this one. And what is Madam Web? Okay, an interesting cast from this girl from that movie and this girl from that movie. You know, the girl from the Ghostbusters is in this, and the girl from Euphoria is in this, and the girl from Dora the Explorer, yeah, she's in here. And then you have your one from 50 Shades of Grey playing Madam Web, who's supposed to be an older lady in the comics, but sure, listen, I like that we have Adam, what's your man? Adam, he's from Severance.
Adam Scott,
yeah, he's playing either Uncle Ben or Peter Parker's father, and then either Peter Parker's aunt or mother is in it. Don't know. I might not care. So this
don't know, don't care.
Yeah, so this movie's coming out in February 2024, and yeah, it's going to be Sony's year. And after that, we've got Venom 3 and Craven the Hunter coming out. Yeah. Do you think we'll have repeat business of Morbius?
I'd almost guarantee it. Like, it's crazy that we're having a year where we're getting 3 Sony Spider-Man universe movies that don't feature Spider-Man, and we're getting like 1 MCU film. Like, it just feels like it's just all over the place.
I think that's needed. Not just an MCU movie, Deadpool, but that's in talk for another time. But yeah, I think, well, when it comes to, hey, look, in the trailer they have a guy wearing a Spider-Man looking type of suit, and they say his name Ezekiel something, as if we're supposed to know who he is from the comics.
Yeah.
And I think people are just ripping the piss out of this trailer, and not because it stars 4 or 5 female protagonists. No, I think they're just ripping in the piss of it because, are you for real? Are you actually making this?
It's on the same level for me as when they announced that they were doing an El Muerto film, which is like a wrestler who fought Spider-Man once. You're like, what? Nobody wants to see this.
And he's played by Bad Bunny as well.
Yeah, like this, like, no offense to the people behind the movie, I'm sure that they worked hard on it and want to make a good film. Now, we could be eating our words come February, but I don't think we will. Like, it's just not something that a general audience is mad to see. Like, oh, Madam Web. Who? Like you said, she's a side character, like a CD character from the Spider-Man universe, and it's the equivalent of if we just got an Uncle Ben and Aunt May movie. Like, it's not what we want to see. We want to see Spider-Man.
I'd argue an Uncle Ben, Aunt May TV show will be more intriguing than this. But like you said, Dave, we could be eating our words in February of next year. So until then, we're gonna reserve the right to talk shit about it and make fun of it, but we'll leave our expectations out the door and walk in hoping, because we are going to see it, David. Am I right? We are going to see it.
Yeah, it's all Morbius. So we have to see this.
Okay, David, with that movie trailer of the week out of the way, me and you are here to talk about a prequel, pretty much scraping the barrel of the franchise that has come and gone. It's like, can we get something out of this? You know, what intellectual property do we have that we can make a quick buck out of? And there is that prequel book for the Hunger Games movies in that franchise. Let's do that. Okay, so the Hunger Games, the Ballad of Snakes and Ladders has been released for this year, and we've been waiting for it to come, and it takes the exact name from the book to this movie. And as far as movie titles go, in terms of how long they are, this movie is also very long for what it's worth. Because normally when a movie hits the climax, it's not long after until it's over. Well, they touch on an extra 35 minutes after that, but we'll get that in a minute. But yeah, and even though it was as long as it was, as was with the movie title, I think the movie still needed more to breathe, because I thought, as long as it was, the movie still needed to breathe out its pacing, because it was quite quick and quite rushed in almost all the scenes. There was no I did my homework, Dave. I got a load of notes. But what are your quick thoughts on it? I didn't hate the movie. I didn't overly like it myself, but it was fine.
Well, when I was younger, I actually really enjoyed the Hunger Games books. I remember reading those when I was kind of a young teen, I suppose, and that's who it's aimed at. It's aimed at they're called young adult novels, kind of for a reason. The whole Hunger Games and, in a way, Harry Potter, Divergent, The Maze Runner, that kind of stuff, they're all in the same category. Twilight, yeah, exactly. They're all in the same category. And so, kind of around the time the Hunger Games movies were coming out, all those other movies were coming out. And it seems like we've, in a way, almost moved past the adaptations of the young adult novel.
I feel that as well.
Yeah, it just, it doesn't seem like... I don't know, has the medium changed in that, do we see these young adult novels now as TV series? Do they stay as young adult novels? But there's not as many in the same genre coming out as films. So when this one was announced, I know that Suzanne Collins, who's the author, she had obviously written this prequel, but it only came out in the last couple of years anyway. It's a relatively new prequel. So I guess maybe they have a contract with her that any kind of... anything that she writes within this Hunger Games universe, they have the rights straight to adapt it, whatever deal that may be. But it seems pretty quick in terms of a turnaround. I think this movie obviously came out this year, 2023, but I think the novel only came out 2020, 2021 maybe. I feel like it's not that long since the novel came out. So it's just I suppose it was just surprising to see going back to this universe. I didn't think that we would ever go back to this universe. But it is one that set itself up for a lot more. Because something that I think was very clever in what she did as an author was that when the first Hunger Games came out, we're immediately dropped in and we're told this is the 74th Hunger Games. So it really does set you up that this... there's 74 more previously that we could do as prequels, or you can dip in and out of them. This one was interesting, this one is interesting. So setting herself up to make prequels if she ever wanted to. I never thought that we would. I thought we would get stuff that was very close to where the Hunger Games lie. I thought we would see other people that featured in those movies and maybe see their Hunger Games and stuff like that. But I was definitely not expecting to see the origin story of the main series villain. I was surprised by that aspect of it, definitely. Like you're saying there, it's a movie that definitely peaks. It's unconventional compared to the other Hunger Games movies, because the Hunger Games is the event. That's what we're kind of all there to see. That's the same way in the story. Yeah, the same way in the story itself, everyone's there to see the Hunger Games. That's kind of what we're here to see as well. We're here to see the Hunger Games.
Not what happens after.
Yeah, it's just it's weird to have the Hunger Games be the middle of the movie and then it end, and then we get like it's kind of like nearly an hour after.
I think it's 40 minutes at least, maybe 35, 40 minutes.
It's long enough that I was kind of like, okay, where are we going with this? Because like, yeah, like I came and I saw what I wanted to see. I wanted to see the Hunger Games. It just was oddly paced, I suppose, and I mean that's not a fault of, I suppose, the movie. That's the book it's based on. You know, the book does also do that.
They did the adaptation quite to and fro. Like, they didn't really waffle anything. It's an accurate adaptation.
I can see people making the argument that I think initially they had thought about making this 2 movies, and I can see that, and maybe fleshing out the second half after the actual Hunger Games and telling a completely different story. Would that have been better? I don't know. Would the first, like, if we had seen just this as the first movie and it be right up until the end of the Hunger Games, and then the second movie be an expansion of after the Hunger Games, I don't know. I feel like maybe if they had fleshed out some of the aspects more, like that where you said that everything felt a bit rushed, in a way it did. The world, even though it's something that we are aware of and we've been in this world before, it's still kind of a generation back. Like, we're seeing the beginning of the war, and the Hunger Games are not like they are when we are first introduced them, with Katniss and Peeta. So it's interesting to see it kind of close enough to its inception, and that we're at a point where they're not popular and they're nearly considering getting rid of them, so I kind of nearly would have liked to see a little bit more of that, like what state are the games actually in before they start to become the games that we see. So would this movie have benefited us too? Maybe, definitely.
I argue this movie should have been a limited series, 8-10 episodes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, definitely.
Not that it would have been financially popular, but sure, it's probably not financially popular right now. It's probably not making money because people don't care about this type of stuff. People want to watch Dom Toretto drive off the Hoover Dam with an explosion following him.
I know that it was a budget of 100 million, and then this weekend it did make 100 million, so it's made its budget back. Now that's just domestic. I don't know about the worldwide, so I think it's a little bit too early to tell still what it's like, how it's doing financially. But okay. I could definitely see it as a limited series. Yeah.
Oh, I'd argue, yeah, limited series is what it would have should have been, almost, because that way you allow many elements and many factors of, and when I say that I mean characters as well, specifically, to breed, to take some time to flesh them out and get us as an audience to understand why we are following the villain of the main franchise when he's in his youth. That can work, but for two hour and 10-minute movie, is that what it was, or 2.5 hour movie, something like that. It's 2 hours and 56 minutes, I believe. So it still didn't do that for me, in my opinion. Now, Tom Blyth plays a young President Snow, and I know him just as much as the actor who played young Winston from the John Wick movies into the Continental, and just as much as the guy who plays the Sandman in the Netflix show. Point being, I don't know who the fuck Tom Blyth is. But he was good, But as I said, I thought his progression from innocent, possibly modest and eager to become great for the sake of his family into a fascist Nazi was just not all that fleshed out. Yeah. And
towards the end it just seemed that it was just like that he's different.
I can go into details to why I think this, because
Do go into it. But go into it.
Well, okay, Dave, I'll go into it, right? Since we're talking about Snow, I'll talk about Snow. After the Hunger Games, just because he's saying mean things, like, why do you care that this woman is in the prison? Or just because you've killed a one-armed boy and you're in shock in that scene, but the next scene when you're telling your cousin, oh, it felt powerful. Just because you're saying these mean things because by default he's supposed to be a bad guy as a result of Donald Sutherland playing him, I just thought, it was more like a tell, don't show type of situation. You're telling us through his dialogue the things that reflect him going bad. When we all expect that, but you're just feeding it to us instead of letting him show us without the use of saying it. Just when he says it, oh, I guess that's it. He's one step closer to being the villain he's deemed to be. And I thought, what you're doing is right, but just killing someone and in his defense, maybe saving a person who he cares about and putting him in situations where he's got to choose between a rock and a hard situation. So he's got to break bad somehow, and there he does. But these are decisions he makes, but then he's just saying it in conversation through dialogue that I like being bad, or not that he says that, but it's like Topher Grace from Spider-Man 3. I like being a bad. It's like you're saying it to us, and saying the lines to make the point manifest instead of giving silence or time to manifest the progression itself. It's and he's not contemplating about decisions with consequences such as killing his friend indirectly, not deliberately, but he decides to record his friend straight away and inform Dr. Gould, played by Viola Davis, and you didn't think he was going to be hung for it, and his friend being hung in that scene, like, going back to scenes being rushed, that scene is done within max 40 seconds. And I'm being kind with them 40 seconds. I didn't think there was no real build-up and there was no pace to breed. And then towards the end of the movie, suddenly being paranoid about Lucy Gray Baird and what she may know, and then that next step to attempting to kill her. And then he's making that decision after the plan to abandon his post to leave with her. After this is a life altering decision where he abandons his hopes to restore his family name by running off with this girl, pretty much sentencing him to death if he gets caught. And from that plan to being paranoid because he may have let loose that, oh yeah, I actually killed 3 people instead of 2. Now he's paranoid that she knows, and what's she going to do about it? And that step to being putting a gun at her and attempting to kill her. So, like, he wasn't even when she left the snake to bite him, that wasn't even poisonous. I don't think there was no visual indication that it was poison. Didn't even do the cheap way of saying, is this poison? This is poison, isn't it? Like, through dialogue, tell, don't show. And then decided not to leave with her, and then he goes back after that commitment to abandon his post. So those are just some details that I thought, really, you're gonna just make these decisions quickly without really contemplating what you're doing. I know you're following the book, but here I wrote this, Dave, and I'm very proud of it because I think this summarizes what I'm trying to say. As we're shown here, the process of going from a promising 18-year-old Snow to a villainous 80-year-old Snow by forcing a default, because since it goes this way in the books, we have to make the trajectory go this way in the movies. and it's not enough to simply accept it as so.
Yeah. What you're saying there now, I completely agree with. It seems like in the movie he has to end up like Donald Sutherland. He has to end up like he is 60 years from now. And you don't need that. It felt like they were rushing to get him to be the character that we know, even though this takes place 60 years ago. Like, can you imagine if a decision that, something that happened to you now was completely, that affected you and you stayed exactly the same as you are now for the next 60 years? That'd just be crazy.
Dramatic effect.
Yeah, I think it really wanted to show us that this is the same character as the one from the original trilogy or quadrilogy or whatever it is. But yeah, it was just so quick in its characters. Like I thought that the the Snow that we're introduced to, like he kind of, in a way, he's played to be a little bit like sympathetic, and he's not actually coming from money. He's working hard, going through his studies. He's the best in the class, and still the dean, played by Peter Dinklage, that I'm actually out to get you. Like, I don't care. You will not get the money. You will not rise above anything that you are. And
that's a good thing kind of, as well. A rock and a hard place.
Yeah. And I liked that the bit where he kind of comes in and he says, like, look, no matter what, I'm going to make sure that you don't get the money. So do you actually care now about this girl? And then he does have that kind of realization, like, oh, okay, do I care about her? And I think he does come to the conclusion, and he's a little bit melted as well. His heart is a little bit melted as he gets to know Lucy Gray. And I really did think that the trajectory that we were going in, and I think that this might have worked a little bit better, I would have been able to stomach him a little bit more towards the end, or accept the how he was at the end, is that if, say, the events had taken place the same, and she won the Hunger Games and he had been caught cheating to help her because he actually did develop feelings for her, and then he has that moment where he bribes Year One to go to 12, and he gets there, and if she then realized, like, if she had actually been kind of putting on a show for him as well, convinced him that she had feelings for him when actually there was nothing. Like, she would just see him like, no, you're capital, you are putting me in these games. So if a little bit later on, then she's like, I have to keep this up, I have, now he's here in front of me, and then later on she be the one to betray him, and that would kind of give more reason to his huge outbursts and trying to shoot her and stuff like that. Whereas the way that it happened, it really just did feel like they got to that house and then they just, neither of them trusted each other for no reason. Even with that line where he does slip up and say that he's killed 3 people, that wasn't even enough for me to be like, okay, because he did talk his way out of it a little bit. Just as soon as they were in that house, the two of them were just different people altogether.
Yeah, and I didn't know what he was thinking, really, and with her, you didn't know what she was thinking, not really, but you're getting a feeling that this is what's happening, this is the vibe that you're getting. He sees guns, she's helpless and unarmed, she's trying to get away, and he's there thinking, you're trying to build up tension, but I don't think it's just quite clear, and that has to do with the rush scenes and the slow pacing. But you know what, David, the backup on that idea that if she was putting on a show, I think it would have been more effective if Lucy Gray was a rebel. What if she was a rebel? What if she was part of the resistance? Because, they're teeing up who is a songbird and who is a snake. Wherever the fuck a songbird is. It's pretty much telling you who is mean and who is good. Well, Lucy Gray Baird, she's a great handling on snakes, and we can talk to her maybe after the flashbacks, because we'll get into her in a sec. But pretty much the show is by the idea they're trying to tell us is, Snow is a snake and Lucy Gray is a songbird. Well, I think what if there's a little bit grey area, not so much.
A Lucy Gray area.
Yeah, so she leaves a snake for him as a trap to bite him. A snake. She's a snake, and and then he starts shooting all the Mockingjays, going crazy. That is descending into madness type of scene. And then I thought, the only good thing I saw that was a real good visual progression from Snow turning bad was when he saw the situation that was happening behind doors, and this rebel knows some information, and the mayor's daughter knows something, and because of lover spat, she's gonna go off and tell Daddy, and since her telling Daddy would ignite what's the word I'm looking for, trouble for Lucy Gray, he decides to, without hesitation, which was a good call for it, to shoot her, and then the rebel shoots the guy as well. So there are some deaths there. A good show, don't tell progression of Snow descending into the villain he's deemed to be. That was a good one. Because it was done all in a matter of blocking and showing as opposed to telling us all, you know. So I thought that that was a good thing. And what if Lucy Gray was a rebel? Well, then that would just put a bit of a divide between them even more. So yeah, as a whole, I thought the whole movie needed time to breathe.
Yeah,
and then there's so many scenes you would have needed to accommodate. To accommodate that, you would have needed to add scenes, but then take other scenes out because it still is too long. So yeah, that's pretty much where I stand on Snow as a character. I liked it, but for good attempt for making a movie where the villain is the protagonist, but just put other villains around him first, because you're watching this movie. You have to know that main guy turns into the bad guy. The only other comparison off the top of my head is Anakin in the prequels turn into Darth Vader. So who the hell is Lucy Gray Baird? Who is she in this? And well, it has to lead to a certain direction, because if it doesn't, how is Tom Blyth going to turn into Donald Sutherland? So yeah. Do you want to move into some flashbacks?
Do some flashbacks, yeah, and then maybe talk about Lucy and then the actual games themselves. I won't talk about the games themselves, yeah. Laura, play that jingle. Thank you, Laura. Okay, so we got some flash facts for us. So, as we discussed a little bit before, the Hunger Games... What's the full title here? Okay, The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds Snakes is a prequel, and it takes place 64 years before the initial Hunger Games, which is where we meet Katniss and Peeta.
Oh, yeah, so we got little... remember that scene earlier in the movie where, I'm holding this, it's a Katniss. And
yeah,
that's just... You're just hitting me across the head with the message. You're just pandering me. You're trying to get me to go, look, she said the name of the main protagonist in the main Hunger Games series that she has no connection or relationship to whatsoever.
Those moments felt very ham-fisted. It just felt like, your one pulls up and it's called like what did she call it, like a bog potato or something like that, and then she's like, I always preferred the name Katniss. And then like the music like swells a little bit and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I know it's the Hunger Games, I know Katniss is a character. It just it was too ham-fisted. And you can do those subtle callbacks and nods subtly, and we'll get into that a little bit later with the flashbacks, when it's not like ham-fisted like that, because not only does she have that moment where she goes, oh, I prefer the name Katniss, but it's also like the last thing that she says to him before. Maybe that's intentional. Obviously, it's the last thing really that she says to him before she goes, like, oh, I'm just going to go out and get some Katniss. And then, the Hunger Games come along, the original one, and it's Katniss that brings him down. Like, it just feels like you're trying to draw a line between 60 years. Do you think that anyone would really remember the name of a plant that you heard about 60 years ago? Like, he just wouldn't give a shit.
See, David, you don't understand. It's a metaphor. It's symbolic. Do you not see what what the director is trying to pander to you. But yeah, 64 years, you know, it's... Yeah, okay, sure, yeah. I mean, I tell you what, though. This movie was a good, in-depth introduction, welcome to what the society of Panem and all the districts are, as opposed to the previous movies were more like event type of plots. This was more lending to room to breathe, like what the Godzilla and King Kong movies are, to, you know, event type of plots and stories, whereas Monarch Legacy of Monsters, the TV show, which is in the same universe, is more of a room to breathe and pace and get a sense of what the world is now in a more time well spent TV form, like what this movie, I argue, should have been. Limited series, 10 episodes, hell, give it 12 if you want, but that's you know, because I felt like I got to know more of society and life living in this movie, you know, with the school and the poverty and the different classes and even some what's the corruption. Yeah, so I thought that was good. At least that was a good thing in this movie.
Moving on to flashback number 2, just that kind of subtle nods. I think that this was done really well. So in an interview with Vogue, costume designer Trish Somerville said the corset that Lucy Gray wears is covered in flowers. Those flowers are actually Katniss and Primrose. This is a nod obviously to Katniss Everdeen and her sister Prim from the original films. I think that there is a nice subtle nod. You know, it's not in your face like this is Katniss and Primrose, but it's just a little nod, like they're two flowers. Just so happens that a couple of years from now, two sisters who are going to be integral, but it's not like shove it in your face like the other.
Yeah, so that was a good show, don't tell type of situation. But then they went back on themselves, you know, just in case they didn't get what we're doing here, and, you know, let's just tell instead of showing. You know, sure, why not? You know, tag out our memories. Tiger and nostalgia.
Flashback number 3. This is the first film in the Hunger Games franchise to have the male build first and the female build second, whereas in the other 4 films it's flipped, with Katniss played by Jennifer Lawrence and Peeta played by Josh Hutcherson.
Fucking misogyny. Woke. No. Oh wait, no, yeah.
It's the other way.
I'm trying to appeal to our other fans who are woman hating arseholes who should not be listening to our show.
Don't appeal to them.
Yeah.
And then
it's an interesting thing I would not have noticed, but it's you know, it's legally sound that he should be billed first because it's about him. He's the main character.
Flashback number 4. Rachel Zegler actually filmed this movie right after filming Snow White, but this movie has released now first, and Snow White isn't releasing until 2025.
That's actually interesting. So she filmed Snow White, then films this. This comes out first. Snow White is not coming out next year, but the following year. I think this is the first time it's the first time we mentioned Snow White on this podcast. I have a lot of thoughts on Snow White, and let me tell these bastardos now, she is not a problem with Snow White. I think she has been casted quite beautifully well for Snow White. She is a fantastic choice to play Snow White.
And she showed her acting chops here now with the singing as well, because she sings live in this Hunger Games movie, and she got a great set of pipes on her.
We'll give some dedication to Lucy Gray Baird now in after these flashbacks, but yeah, that's quite interesting. It's strange now. So they've done film in Snow White, but I bet they're doing all this work now to CGI the dwarves that they were not going to use, replacing the German folklore magical creatures that were the biggest, stupidest silly gog of shite Disney has ever thought of, because Peter Dinklage, who's also in this movie, didn't like that they were doing dwarves, and because Peter Dinklage is the king of dwarves, Disney decided to replace the dwarves altogether, knock out good promising roles for dwarves for this movie. David, I want to talk about Snow White, but I'll not do it here. But
we'll save it for 2025. And then the final flash fact. This is one of the biggest films to secure an interim agreement from SAG-AFTRA, which meant that the actors were allowed to promote this film during the 2023 actors' strike. So I think Lionsgate came along and said, yeah, whatever you end up agreeing to, whatever the end result is, we preemptively agree to that. So then SAG-AFTRA said, yeah, you guys can promote this film. So I don't know if that had any change to the actual marketing, or if it changed the, people going to see it because they can see the actors talking about it. But I just thought that was interesting. One of the biggest films to secure an agreement.
I can't identify as someone to be motivated to watch a movie just because one of the stars is talking to a show host. God love the people who do have that. I don't know if I'm going to see this movie, or I've never heard about this movie. And look, there's an actor on the show, like Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon or Conan, and you really thought that you need an actor to go on a show and tell you that you're promoting this movie, and you were having some little chit chat, and as a result you get essentially I don't know, that shit doesn't work on me is all, David.
Yeah, it's not something that we would probably be influenced by in terms of seeing other people talking about the movie, promoting the movie, but it definitely is a factor. I think that if you look at the kind of box office over the last couple of months with the actor strike, when actors can't promote the films, movies have seen a significant kind of decline in how much they've been making. So it's definitely a factor that studios were clamoring for as soon as they got back. Like, I know that with once the actor strike ended, I think Tom Hiddleston and Brie Larson were on Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, like the next day. Like, it was get out and start promoting stuff. So I just thought that was an interesting fact. But that brings an end to our flashback section, and if Laura could play us out, then we can move on to talk about more. Thank you, Laura. So we wanted to talk about then our other main character, Lucy Gray Baird.
I'll fucking tell you about Lucy Gray Baird now.
Go ahead.
That scene where she is the last survivor in the Hunger Games and she starts singing. I felt Rolia, but I felt the goosebumps and the energy from her voice, not from what she was physically doing, but her voice. She was like putting so much emphasis on her lyrics and the words she was singing. I
think it's this moment where she doesn't know what's been done for her in terms of, like, she doesn't know that the snakes aren't going to bite and kill her. She doesn't have that information that we have. So to her, these are her last words.
Yeah.
She is putting an emphasis on every single syllable that she's saying.
Having said that, I thought she was a passive character with no scenes where she leads herself. It kind of feels like most of the time she's always secondary to others, that she's either being watched or monitored. There's not too many scenes where it's her perspective. The only scene that comes off the top of my head is when she's in the tunnels hiding with your man who's from her same district, and even then I believe she still is being monitored. She's the second main character, but she's no leading scenes of her own where we don't know who she is when she's alone. And I thought, and I also thought that to compare her to Garrett and Peter from the Hunger Games, or whatever the fuck their names were,
Yeah, Gale and Peeta, yeah.
True, they did not really have their own perspectives either, but they themselves were not in the Hunger Games. Well, scratch that, backtrack. Peeta was, but Peeta was passive, and they had their own things going on that we knew of, such as Peeta and him being tortured in the latter movies, and Gael Garrett, the less popular Hemsworth brother, he was in the coup of planning the rebellion in the second movie. So like there are things that they were doing behind the scenes, and then some controversy at the end with the death of Katniss' sister and what role Gael or Yaman, whatever Hemsworth with black hair thought that he may or may not have had done with that indirect death. But back to Lucy Gray, she was in the Hunger Games, and even though this is the plot, it's still finished early, but the movie was long, had like at least 35 minutes to go on, and because the movie doesn't end with the Hunger Games ending, it's not enough for that climax to root for her, because yes, you are rooting for her, but that's in the middle of the movie, and then you're watching this plateau, this straight and narrow path that is sort of sunk below underneath the climax, and then you're thinking, what are you trying to do in terms of resolution for these characters? What's the big hurrah, the big final moment for her as the victor of the Hunger Games? But then again, I suppose it's not her story, but it all
I would have liked to
in
see
execution.
Yeah. I would have liked to see her have a bit more agency within the story. I think having her be, like I was saying earlier, just having her be a bit more like maybe performing to your man, to Snow, and playing him as well.
So like here's an example, right? When she sings on TV after the explosion and Snow sees her from his hospital room watching her on the TV, right? And this goes back to scenes being rushed with no room to breathe. This shows Lucky Flickerman is introduced her and she's there and she's singing, but there was no like build up to it. There was no like nerves. How am I going to win the crowd? Stringing the guitar to make sure she still got it. To make sure she's stringing the guitar to make sure she still got it. She just comes on the show as if she's sorting that herself. But that is come and gone real quick, with no like room to breathe. And I am repeating myself with room to breathe and pace to make some room to not rush things and just build up, put some time into it, not have things be so passive, because when this is her moment to win over the crowd and Snow to watch her on the TV, it's happening so passively. I don't know, and Lucky's passing off as a joke, and maybe if she was a rebel, maybe she could have been leading charge of her own story. Yes, off screen, but things behind the scenes. So she was up to, from Snow's perspective, no good. And I thought that, there was goosebumps built up in her scene with the snakes, but not when she was on the TV. So I thought when you said that she should have maybe sang for Snow to maybe show what he is working with, because there wasn't that many scenes of him mentoring her to win over the audience as her being a spectacle. Yes, this is a trial and error of the Hunger Games in doing so, but I mean, if you're setting it up, in the trial and error part really is a good realistic thing to happen. We'll do better next year. Mm-hmm. But when you set it up to make them look like spectacles, I mean, I don't know.
You wanted more of a spectacle.
Well, she was a spectacle in a way when she did win, but that's because she won. But that's because she didn't die, and that's because Snow cheated. So, I don't know. I thought, for the most part, she was a passive character. And as the winner of the Hunger Games, She doesn't have any scenes to lead her own. But like here's an example of scenes that I did get goosebumps. You know, oh, I'm loving this scene, but it was still too rushed. That scene where, you know, there's not many. What are they called? The people in the Hunger Games. They're not victors. They're candidates. Tributes. The black guy with the hat, who's
Reaper. Yeah.
What's his name?
Reaper.
He was cool. I liked him because is that the guy? Because he found his co-tribute from his same district, and he's sad that she's dead. And what does he do? He looks at the dead bodies all around, grabs the quilt, the flag from off the wall, disrespecting the capital, and he starts to carry up all the bodies and line them in front in a row, and he covers them over. That scene was cool, and what he was doing was cool, making me like him. Probably the only guy I remember to, you know, get him behind. But no room to breathe. It's too fast. It's too quick. It's not long enough to watch the goosebumps from my arm, to get on board with the music, the score you're playing. Come on, it's too fast. Remember your man Finnick from the other Hunger Games movies? Yeah, he was cool. Yeah, he was. Yeah, and that's another thing. It felt like there was no characters within the Hunger Games event that you really got to know. That, you know, you really got to. I don't know. Real trial and error this year, but yeah.
The actual games themselves, I think that over the course of the other movies, they're actually probably one of my favourites in terms of just being able to see everything and that kind of initial, like, okay, go, and just seeing like the kids going for each other straight away, like, because you don't really get that in the first one, and in the second one it's not nearly as much like this. It kind of nearly felt in a way like this one was done like as a one shot, like you're just following Lucy here now in this fight.
Yeah.
I thought that I was surprised that when we went to see the arena and it was just a big open room, I was like, oh, so this isn't really a Hunger Games, it's more like just one big fight. It's going to be, I wasn't expecting it to last longer than a day. I thought it was just going to be
it was quite short.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be an all-out brawl and there'd be one person left standing, but I guess the bombing kind of made alternate routes and were able to expand it out a little bit, and maybe that was what led then to later on, as the years go by, having bigger arenas and
that's actually not a bad thing, not so much anyway, it being that whole, pretty much what you said, trial and error, because I'll add to that there. Once these tributes are collected, thrown into a train cart like circus freaks or Jews in the Holocaust,
like cattle,
they're just like cattle, and they're thrown in, and then they're thrown behind a zoo, behind bars as entertainment, as they're not human. And not just that, right? They're starving, they're thirsty, they're feeling sick, so they're not healthy, they're not doing good, and then because they're treated as wild, being teased by their so-called mentors, with food and medicine, and when they get riley, they get shot for it, they get killed. As seen here, a few of these tributes get killed, especially at the bombing, which I didn't think lead to too much when it comes to the rebels and the rebellion. Which I didn't think lead to too much with the rebels and the rebellion, at least not in this movie, because once that bombing happened, I didn't think there was too much of it. It felt everything else when it came to the rebels, it was very passive, which is why I think Lucy Gray should have been maybe a rebel, undercover somehow, some way, if you wanted to interrope that in. But like I said, with the games, this is the 10th one, and they really are learning, how to be better every year, the next year, and so on and so forth. And so that's where Snow comes in, who is very smart in this movie, taking upon himself his own initiative to get the things he needs to get done, whether some of it was motivated by love or by his lust to restore his family name, whatever. It was a whole learning process, and it was good. But
I think it's interesting to see such a significant difference between this Hunger Games and the one we're first introduced to, like that, where the victors or the tributes even are kind of brought in like that, put in a zoo to be spectacles, whereas in the first Hunger Games they're a different type of spectacle and they're celebrities and they're brought in and they're on the chat shows and that kind of stuff. And seeing the significant difference between this Hunger Games and that Hunger Games shows Snow's influence in that. Like I'm pretty sure that the kids, they were all still wearing the same clothes that they arrived in, and they were still dirty from
given uniforms
hadn't showered or anything.
In the new movies.
Exactly.
Whereas here they're wearing like old fashioned type of clothes from the 1910s to the 1950s, as if they are from the circus.
Whatever they were wearing on the day of, like So
and they're just thrusted in, like, go fight to the death, kill each other. That's like I don't know, the difference between what they did back in the old days, probably, where they, I don't know, had slaves fight each other to the death, as one scene demonstrated in Django Unchained, whereas in the main Hunger Games movies they are treated like celebrities and spectacles, like, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, except they fight each other to the death and you can vote for them. So I thought, that difference between the games then here and then over yonder with Katniss and Primrose, there was a good you know the word I'm trying to explain.
Juxtaposition. Yeah.
There you go. Thank you, my friend. That was good. That was well done, but still, the way I think in a real quick way of summing it up, for every good thing they did, they just did another thing that was not good, and when it doesn't do it for you, I mean, come on. And I also just wanted to add here, like, especially with the third act, because once the games were over, like I said, like 35 minutes later, is so what you're gonna do as a climactic finale, as opposed to the Hunger Games, where Lucy Gray survives. So you have to create your own build-up. But overall, the scenes that were supposed to be important, such as his friend's death or making decisions without consequences, and all of a sudden they don't trust each other, it's that whole not so clear and following the direction of the characters, like, that's your resolution, and he goes crazy and she goes missing. And that's how this movie pretty much concluded, where he did shoot at her, but she escaped, and now she's gone, and she disappeared.
We don't know what happened to her.
Yeah. Whether she
was shot and then she goes and dies off in the woods somewhere, or if she went up north, I'm pretty sure it's left incredibly vague that she just was never seen again. Yeah, and
I looked this up as well. She was removed from the archives as to her winning the 10th annual Hunger Games as the victor.
Oh, okay.
So if someone were to look up who was the winner from the 10th one, they would either have it changed to someone else, or they would, whatever they did, Lucy Gray Baird was removed from the archives. And that's what I like, that idea, because she is then, Lucy Gray Baird as a whole, she feels like a fairy tale. She feels like, it sounds almost like she's folklore, She's a victim, forgotten victor, She's a myth. She's like, I guess what they wanted Luke Skywalker to be in the Force Awakens, because she'd be long dead come the main Hunger Games franchise, and it's so long ago now, like, who's to know who did survive that. and it feels almost like fantasy, like almost a nearly forgotten memory. So Snow has no mention of her at all, whether in the books or in the movie. So I thought that I liked that idea, because that's how I felt about her character way back almost in the trailers, because we know she has to go into a certain direction for Snow to go into his deemed direction.
Yeah.
I
like that. So I like describing her as a fairy tale, that she's, almost a real thing, real. Long forgotten. Yeah. Almost not real. Yeah, I really like that description of her, actually. Yeah.
But man, her singing did give some good goosebumps, especially with the snake scene. That was pretty cool. But too many CGI snakes, in my opinion. But and when she was singing, the song from the other movies, the Hanging Tree song, whatever that was, not that was a bad thing to just tug at your nostalgia. It was, I don't know, it was fine. It was a good way to remember this song from the other movies. Well, here it is here.
See, I think that was done on purpose, but it's done intentionally narratively, because I think she actually wrote that song, and it's supposed to be kind of a thing of like this song that was written by Snow's kind of, say, first love or whatever, and then 60 years later, the girl that's leading a rebellion sings that as a propaganda song. That it's kind of done like that. I thought that was interesting. I didn't feel like that is used as a narrative instrument between the movies, a narrative link, as opposed to, I like the name Katniss. It served a purpose, I suppose, to link the two movies, as opposed to a character's name.
Yeah. How great was Viola Davis and Peter Dinklage?
They were great, and they were... I like that they hammed it up. Viola Davis just was pure crazy. She's like, they just let her go wild. It's like, have a crazy outfit and just have a crazy personality and just go with it. Like, so I like that she really hammed it up. And then Peter Dinklage character, he was like just a bit of an asshole, and he was unapologetically an asshole. That he kind of says to him like, yeah, I'm going to make sure that you definitely don't win the prize. And I liked his character in terms of the fact that you find out towards the end why he has it out for Snow, and it's because his father took the games from him and put his name on it, and now he's forcing all these people to die. And in a way, I was thinking, I was like, oh, it's not really fair to kind of punish the son for the sins of the father. And then I literally was like, that's what the Hunger Games are. You're punishing all these kids for something they didn't do. So I thought that was good narratively, that the problem he has is that now all these kids are being punished because of what the others did, but and he came up with that, and now he's doing exactly that to Snow. But
well, he was right. He was right to do that, because he fucking poisons them.
Yeah, but would he have poisoned... He wouldn't have poisoned him had he not been bad for him. And also, like, that was... having poisoned him, I didn't really see a point to that, other than, I suppose, Snow being spiteful. Like, he's like, you made my life a hell, I'm doing this to you. Because I felt, at the end, it seemed like Snow was above him now. He could have done something else. He could have taken the school away from him or something like that, but poisoning him. And even at that, like, he was clever, I suppose, in that he didn't straight up poison him. He put the stuff in front of him, and he did it of his own volition. So, but that scene, that whole, like, going back to kill him, even if it's inadvertent, it just felt a little bit like like we said earlier, like, I'm trying to get him to be now like Donald Sutherland. Like, at the end of this movie, he has to be like he is at the beginning of the next movie.
Do you think Peter Dinklage will get a nomination for having a Canadian accent?
No, I don't think anyone will see a nomination. We might get a nomination for song or something like that, maybe. But not,
you do agree he did have a Canadian accent in this?
To be honest, I can't remember his accent. He's just Peter Dinklage to me, just Tyrion Lannister stuff.
He was definitely putting on a Canadian accent. I'll tell you what. I was really looking forward to Hunter Schafer playing Tigris Snow, his cousin, because did you know that that character was actually in the fourth Hunger Games movie?
I did,
She was the cat lady. And I didn't know who she was when I watched the movie, not until years later when I looked it up. Oh yeah, who was that creature thing? Oh, Snow's cousin. That little subtle hint of dialogue, I was Snow's designer before he thought I was not beautiful anymore, but obviously I guess that was a metaphor for he betrayed her somehow and discarded her. But I'm sorry, there was nothing of that here. Now, of course, this is 64 years ago, so sure, nothing's probably going to happen until God knows how many years later, but I did think that there was no hint or indication that there was a setup really for a distrust, a real concern between their relationship from him turning bad and her, I don't know, going to the good side.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It did feel like he had it, like he did put family first. Like he put a lot of stock in that. Like that's what he wanted.
Yeah.
He was trying to keep up appearances for the Snow name, and like that, like he comes back. He's concerned about where they're living. They got evicted, and then when he comes back, he moves into his new apartment, to his new house or whatever, and they're there with him. He hasn't just forgotten them. But like that, yeah, like you're saying, like there's a lot of time between this movie and the first movie. They could have fallen out between, but I would have liked to see more of Hunter Schafer. I would have liked to see.
Well, I mean, if you're setting up him this is the point where he turns bad and ends up being the villain of Snow in the main movies. Well, if you're gonna do that, well then I want to see something here. I want to see Hunter Schafer do something to become more of her own character, leading her own path in a way, or even set up for leading her own path. She was more passive than Lucy Gray Baird completely. Like I was really looking forward to her, and didn't get much at all. Like, what does she do? She says, "Let her live." She's one. She's one of the characters to get her own shot, where she's the only one in frame, I think, and she gets to say that. Everyone else says, "Let her live," in a wide shot. So, oh well. But I do want to give a shout out to Jason Schwartzman as Lucky Flickerman.
Oh, as Lucky Flickerman, yeah.
Yeah.
He's obviously the ancestor of Stanley Tucci's Caesar Flickerman from the original. It's nice to see that kind of through line of, this is going back in our family. We've always hosted the Hunger Games and stuff like that. But he was good. He was funny in terms of like weatherman / amateur magician. He's he's good.
I liked him. I thought it was funny, and I don't know about you, but in the cinema I saw this movie, Tuberculosis on Legs really got a big laugh out from the audience when he's hosting the games. One of the tributes is walking. It's the girl who drinks the water and she gets poisoned. Like he says, tuberculosis on legs. Like that just made everyone laugh out loud. Just the way he said it. He said it off camera, so we're watching the monitor of the Hunger Games, and I just thought it was funny. There was a lot of moments like that where he was quite funny. So just wanted to give a quick shout out for him as well. But I think that's all I got to say about that. In hindsight, a lot of scenes rushed. So many important scenes rushed. No room to breathe. Still too long, yet it still needed more to show the progress. Did some show don't tell, but did all others that were tell don't show. And I thought that it was good to see the trial and error Hunger Games arena compared to what it is in the perfection of the later in life. And I really like the idea that Lucy Gray Baird is a fantasy forgotten, a memory forgotten, and not it was all right in a total. But I'm done with the Hunger Games. Like, if you want, whatever. I don't fancy looking at another Hunger Games arena game being done 20 years from this movie just to see what's what. I mean, I'm not. Why? What for? I went into this movie knowing Lucy Gray Baird is going to die or vanish or something's going to happen to her and Snow is just going to turn bad. What else was there to... Everything else is nothing.
Yeah, I to be honest, I don't see them really doing any more. Like I said kind of at the start of the episode, I was surprised to see this one come along at all.
So was I.
The prequel book would come out and like that, it would just exist, kind of like I don't know if you know this, but they actually what's her name, Stephanie Meyer, she released another Twilight book called Midnight Sun, but it's just the first book, Twilight, told from Edward's perspective. So I can't imagine seeing
David, they'll probably do a Twilight TV show like they're doing with Harry Potter, so
possibly, yeah. When are we going to see these book series rebooted in our generation? You know, we're going to be seeing the next, well, we're already going to see a Harry Potter one. So, yeah. Have you got any recommendations before we wrap up?
Do I just? My recommendation is Severance.
Oh, great choice! Yeah.
Yeah, so I watched Severance. It's about starring Adam Scott. Is that right? Yeah, him and a load of other good actors. When they go to work for this company, every time they enter the elevator and enter their floor, they're a different person in their mind. They're a new person. Like it's like their normal self shuts down, and their work self wakes up and they start going to work. So just think about that for a second. Imagine you going to work and you walk through a door. You yourself, who's not at work, goes to sleep, and the person who enters the building to work is a new person who has been created to into existence to work, and that's it. And you think, this is boring. I'd rather go on my phone. What is this even about? This is so boring. Well, to that, David, I say this show is not meant for the simple minds.
It's definitely a complicated one. It's a bit confusing. It's an interesting mystery. It's like, imagine if every time you walked into work, the next thing that you experience is you walking out of work and it's time to go home, and vice versa. There's a version of you that every time they leave work, the next thing they remember is walking back into work, and two minds essentially inhabiting the same body, and one wanting to get out, and a mystery of it's an interesting mystery that it's slow paced, but it's definitely worth it, and some great twists and cliffhangers and stuff like that.
I'll just tell you that when I watched the finale of Severance, I was doing some breathing exercises. Holding my breath, breathing out slowly, breathing out fast. My chest was pumping up like Iron Man, and I was sinking into the couch from where I was watching it. I can't describe why I was going through that existential crisis watching the finale, but David, I was. And if you watch it, you'll know why. And if you don't agree with me, well, I refer back to this show is meant for the not simple minds. Because this show is class. You have a recommendation?
I do. So I would recommend season 2 of Invincible. Well, I'd actually recommend the whole show of Invincible, but season 2 is airing right now. As this episode releases on Wednesday, it'll be the mid-season finale this Friday. It's a good time to catch up now before kind of the second half of the season. I think it comes in January. Like, it's just taking a break for December. But Invincible, it's about...
Sorry, there's no date for part 2 of season 2, but please God, there better be.
Yeah, I hope so. But it's about basically kind of a superhero. It's an animated show on Amazon Prime. It's superheroes, but not really like any that you've seen before, I suppose.
It's nothing you've seen before.
Yeah, it's. I just would recommend it. Make it, if you watch the first episode, you'll see kind of make it all the way through to the end, and you'll see you're in for a ride anyway. And
did you watch episode 3?
I have, yeah, and this next episode, that's why I had to recommend it, is if you're not watching Invincible, start watching Invincible. Amazon Prime are doing well in terms that they have like 2 of the best superhero TV shows, that being The Boys and Invincible, and they couldn't be more different.
Yeah. Good shout, David. Good shout. Well, an hour and 15 minutes. We keep doing long episodes these days. I guess we're just so passionate about the movies we watch. Hope the listeners are passionate and listen to us for these lengthy episodes. Listeners, thank you very much for listening to this week's episode of Talking Pictures Podcast. We are on every Wednesday with an odd given bonus episode released on a weekend. If you like listening to us, please give us 5 stars and give us a like as well, because it costs you nothing and it gives us everything. If you want to give us a little follow, please do on Instagram, Talking Pictures Pod, and we are on the email at talkingpicturespodcast1@gmail.com. If you have any queries or questions on how we do this show, if anything you'd like to talk about for you, send us in an email. We'll do that, no bother. Are we doing anything wrong? Do you have any tips for us on what we should do better? Please send us in. We love the challenge. And we are also on Spotify, which we tend to promote our show on the most because it's easy. But if we are pretty much on every other podcasting app of your choice. And stay tuned for next week's episode of Talking Pictures. Looking forward to getting into the chit chat of Ridley Scott.
Yeah. I wonder what we could be talking about next week. That's a little tease. We won't say exactly what we're talking about, but it's a Ridley Scott and it's a new movie.
Hopefully we'll get more downloads than we did for the Marvels.
Oh man, don't tell you that. We got 1 million downloads, but every other episode's got 2 million downloads. So, yeah. But like that, share your episodes. If you listen to an episode and you agree with us, send us in, your thoughts. If you disagree with us, send us in your thoughts. Make sure to share it on your socials so everyone else can join in on the fun. And yeah, awesome.
If you disagree with us, don't send us in. Sorry. No, I'm
okay.
joking. I'm joking. May the odds be ever in your favour. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Brian.